So welcome everyone to the JB Media Digital Drop-In. I am so excited to be here today as usual because I love getting to see everyone joining us from across the country. So hey Peach, hey Kathy, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let you know where we're coming from, where you're coming from today, because I really enjoy just all of us being able to see the community that we're building across the country. So today's topic is what I've been referring to around the office as WTF meta advertising. I think we could generalize it and just say WTF meta at this point. So I am going to share a slide deck while we're talking in the beginning for the next few minutes. Then I'm going to go live and we're really going to look at the system and discuss things. So for those of you who haven't been to a digital drop-in before, there's a couple things to keep in mind. We're going to end right at 1 o'clock if we can. Usually I stay after for a few extra minutes if there's additional questions. But I try really hard to get everybody back to work on time, even though I know this subject, we could probably stay here all afternoon and keep talking about it. 2, on Friday, we'll send out the copy of the slide deck as well as a copy of this recording. And I really want to encourage everyone with this particular recording that you really feel comfortable sharing this with anybody that you know of or hear of that is struggling with Meta or is even starting their Meta advertising and is kind of new to the system. Because today we're going to have an agenda of talking about some of the problems that are happening, some of the solutions, but then I'm also going to talk a little bit about how to really manage Meta and some tips around creating campaigns and developing a strong campaign mindset. So we're going to touch on a few different topic areas. I want to encourage everyone, there is a Q&A feature. If you roll over your Zoom tools, you can submit questions to that Q&A. For today's topic, simply because of the type of topic it is, I'm really going to encourage folks to use that Q&A. I will be looking at it probably more towards the end of the call, but I will keep an eye on it as we go along. But that way, if there's longer questions in relationship to Meta, they're not in the chat, which gets a little bit hard to follow. So again, don't try to remember everything I say today. Do take this recording in the future and share it with everyone that you can that needs help, because Meta is truly becoming such a problematic platform, although there's a lot of good to be had on Meta. So it's like a real double-edged sword, right? And I'm at the point where, I was literally just in the office this morning working on this presentation and just digging into this topic over and over and over, trying to understand it, trying to put together a presentation that I think is going to be helpful. It's like a huge lift. It's mind melting. So I do this work every day and it melts my brain to talk about this subject. And so I really feel for anybody who's trying to manage it on their own, where they don't have, all the time in the world to spend digging into this. Most of you know, if you've got an issue that you want to talk about after the webinar, please, the slide deck has all of my contact information. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, connect with me personally on social media. Let me know if you have questions. I can't always solve a problem and I can't always answer super long technical questions for free, just because it takes a lot of time to explain the system, but I will point you in the right direction as often as I can. And hopefully today is really going to be helpful in you problem solving for yourself. And if you're not having problems with Meta, really setting yourself up so that if you ever do, there will be a way to figure out a solution without having to wait months and months and months. And also for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Benoit. I'm the lead instructor and co-founder of the JB Media Institute. And I teach and speak and present and consult on a wide variety of digital marketing topics. And I run an online course called the Content Strategy Roadmap. I also help produce a conference every year called the DIY Tourism Marketing Conference that happens here in Asheville every November. And so if you're interested in learning, having more deep dives, really wanting to put together a content strategy of some kind, don't hesitate to reach out to me and find out more information. And also in the slide deck, you can watch a video about our course. You can also click on this graphic right here and learn more about our conference if you'd like to attend. Oh, and I'm sorry that started. We'll click over that. So really quick, how am I feeling about Meta? Maybe some of you will relate. I think the sad face does it. I wish there was an emoji of somebody pulling their hair out. I feel like maybe that's more accurate for how I feel about it. But I think the biggest problem that Meta has is their inability to provide support. So we are going to talk about regular hacking and things like that, but specifically the advertising platform is what I'm focused on today. What I want to say is that we're in a situation where we spend money on a platform to then have almost no accurate or useful documentation for support. And then when you are able to get in front of a representative of Meta and talk to them, their just inability to provide anything but a very frustrating and stressful situation is kind of stunning. Now, one point I was making earlier in the office that I want to share is we can't blame the support people. If you've been working in this world, then you know from talking to the support people, I don't think they're getting any more tools or support from Meta than we are. So they're just the poor people who have to answer the chats or call us on the phone. A lot of times I would assume, though I don't always know for sure, that they're working potentially in another country. And that these are people that are just trying to have a job and make a living, right? And so they're in the same situation we are. They're tasked with answering our questions, but I don't believe they're being given the tools to do a good job. I believe they're kind of thrown into the wild. And I think that's really where we can look at the core corporation of Meta and the leaders of Meta and really kind of criticize them for their inability to provide support all around to the people who work for them that are trying to help us, and to us, the people that actually pay them, even if we're small businesses, we're contributing to their bottom line. Also, when it comes to just personal accounts and business pages in general, getting support for any of that stuff is incredibly frustrating. So again, I was talking to everybody this morning about how I think the biggest struggle for me as somebody who's working in this world is when I'm dealing with Meta, it's highly repetitive. I have to repeat myself over and over and over and over. I have to submit chats over and over and over and over. I have to respond to emails over and over and over. I have to take phone calls over and over and over, sometimes for weeks, maybe even months at a time. And I have to keep saying the same thing, and I have to keep providing the same documentation. So it's just, I want you to be prepared in this world when you try to solve a problem, that it's really important that you prepare yourself for this repetition. I feel like in some ways they're trying to like break me down, so I'll give up, and I'm just stubborn enough that I won't, because I understand the value of getting our pages back from a hack or solving a problem, not starting over with another page. And so, this is where, again, I think the support people that are at that first line of support, the ones that we actually talk to by phone and email and chat, these people are doing their very best, but they're at the very beginning of the support system. They don't have the technical capabilities to solve the problems. What they're doing is escalating things up to the people who can fix it. And we rarely get to talk to those people. So Eric, to your point, yeah, there's a lot of great support people that I think are wonderful. But then I will get kicked to another support person like a day later. And again, I'll have to repeat myself and resubmit everything, even though I have a case number, even though I have all this information that they should be able to reference. It just seems like it's never that easy for them to do. So when you get into solving problems, you just have to prepare yourself for this frustrating system that we're in, and that the communications is really poor, in my opinion, overall. And that the poor people that are our first level of support, they just are kind of left alone with very little ability to do anything. So all they're doing is trying to force things up a ladder. And then we just keep forcing it up the ladder over and over and over until it gets attention. So a few things about, like I said, just protecting yourself and being aware of what can happen if you get hacked, right? So protecting your brand, which in my mind is really your investment, right? Always have multiple admins on your Facebook page and in your business manager. We're going to look at that live so you know what I'm saying, exactly what that means, but always have more than one admin, especially if you're a small business. I don't care if it's the owner and they never touch Facebook. I don't care if it's your mom or a friend, somebody you trust needs to have full administrative access to things just in case you lose yours, right? You want to copy down all relevant account ID numbers and links in case of an emergency. So when you do have something go wrong, you lose access to something, there's an error, something's not working, you go to the support, you're able to talk to them. There are like 8 to 10 IDs that you have to make the issue get fixed faster. So Marilyn, you just commented that you didn't have any of that stuff, and we were able to get, your access back, but we had to do all that repetition and yelling and drama only because we didn't have that information. So if nobody's had a hack, they haven't had a problem, writing all this stuff down is absolutely essential because it will save you, I think, like hours and hours of your life. I'm going to show you where the chat area is. Just knowing kind of how the chat works and how you can get booted out of it is really important, right? So knowing how to get back to something, and we'll talk about that. Omi, your question. So as far as I know right now, Meta Verified doesn't change any of this. It's not to say that it wouldn't in the future, but I've talked to many, many other agencies, and it doesn't matter how big the account is. It doesn't matter how much money you've spent, none of that stuff. We have clients at the JB Media Group agency where they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on advertising. And, the support is really no better than I'm getting with any other account, according to their team in some ways. Also, I have another account where they have over 60,000 fans. They've been hacked. They've had no access since November. It doesn't matter that they have that many fans, or that they have also paid thousands of dollars in advertising before. So maybe the verification will make a difference. It would be great if they could say that was true and that paying meant you got some sort of higher level of support. But so far, they have not said that, nor has anything proven that that would be the case. Like I said, you're going to have to get comfortable with answering the same questions over and over and repeating yourself. It's just how it's going to work. And if you've been hacked and you've truly lost access to things, I'm telling people right up front, you should commit to a process of 3 to 6 months to get your access reinstated. It might happen faster than that, and occasionally it does. But truly, it can take 3 to 6 months, and you need to be ready for that long game if you really want to get access to your pages back or your advertising back, and you don't want to have to lose all the work that you've put into your Facebook account or your Instagram account. So we're going to jump into advertising tips in just a moment, but I want to stop sharing this and going to reshare live so we can talk a little bit about what I was just explaining. And I do want to remind everybody, if you joined the call late, please put any questions you have in the Q&A feature, and I'll be glad to answer them, hopefully towards the end of this time. So you should be able to see my Facebook right now. One thing I wanted to mention that Marilyn just posted in the chat that's really important. So yes, Marilyn basically lost access to her business page and couldn't, it was hacked. There was somebody else that took away the access. We embarked on a journey of actually just tagging Meta and reporting the hacked page over and over and over and over, right? It was annoying, but eventually it worked, right? Just reporting it multiple times. She was able to get everything back to a certain extent. But again, it was really difficult to kind of come from the outside. I have another friend where we did the same thing when her Instagram was hacked. A bunch of us as a group, friends of hers and other colleagues of hers, we just kept tagging Meta and commenting on different posts that were hacked content. We kept reporting the pages every day, probably for a solid month. And eventually they reached out to her to solve the problem. So when I say repetition, that's what we mean. Sometimes you have to sort of harass them over the course of weeks for them to pay attention to the problem. And yeah, it can affect your personal account, it can affect your business page, and it can affect your business manager. So that's what I want to talk about right now for a few minutes, is the many layers of Meta. So when I log into Facebook, as most of you know, my personal Facebook is the administrator of all my business accounts. So the pages that I am attached to, that I'm working on, the business managers that I'm attached to run advertising campaigns and look at data, it's all attached to me as Sarah Benoit. And so that's the first thing that you just want to make note of, right? So if I go up here and I go and look at my profile, this is the link to my personal profile, right? And so I want to be sure that I've kind of got that. Just I know what that is. So if they ever ask me for it, if they ever say they want to reinstate an admin, I can give them that direct link to who I am, right? Because they can often see if that link was previously attached to an account. Once I get in here, there's something I can do immediately to get into the ads system, and that is go to the ads manager. Now, if you haven't run ads before, you may not have this option popping up so easily. You may need to go to one of your business pages, and then you can usually go to what we call the ad center. So let me show you an example of this. You've got this option right here, which takes you into kind of a shortcut. This is very similar to what they do with sort of that boost post button. They're sort of shortcuts into the main ads manager. And then as I sort of dig around inside of here, you'll notice every once in a while, a tiny little link will pop up and link me to the full ads manager. And when I go in there, that's where we get into the full advertising system. So personal, then the business page and kind of some ad tools. And then there's the ads manager, which basically is kind of level to the business manager, right? Which I'll explain in a minute. But these are the different layers of the meta system that can be associated with your business. Now, because originally I ran ads as an individual person, I was a small business owner, just me running ads for one client at a time, I had what they call a personal ads manager, right? So there's my ad account ID for my individual self as Sarah Benoit. A lot of times you'll graduate up to the business manager if you work with a vendor or a social media professional, because what they have is they're setting up a business manager where they can put your credit card in, and then their personal account can still have access to other business managers, right? So this is where if you have multiple clients, it makes sense to understand how the business manager works. If I'm a business or an organization or a brand, a business manager makes sense because it's also going to allow me to really separate out the business part of the advertising system, even though my personal account is how I access it. I'm now going to be able to give other people's personal accounts access. So if I'm a company and I want 5 people to be able to access the advertising, maybe our marketing director, the social media manager, and our other vendor, right? Then I'm going to be able to do that inside of the business manager. So if I click see more ad accounts, I'm already connected to a bunch of business managers. And I even have one for JB Media Institute, right? So that's our company where I have a business manager where I can dig into working with clients and looking at their accounts. And again, it sort of gives us more of a business to business conversation. But the business manager, if you've had a vendor or you've created it yourself, once you get in here, it sort of lands you into the campaigns area automatically. But when you jump into this area, there's an all tools option. And this is where you're going to have the business settings, right? And it's important when you first set this up to go in and adjust the business settings, which look like this. Now you can see that we've got multiple people in our company, right, that have access to different things. These are different personal profiles, right? And you can see they've been given a certain status. So some people are active versus inactive. But once I add a person to this, I don't just need to add them under people. I now need to go into our account assets, which are all here under accounts. And I need to add the asset and add the person to that asset, right? So our JB Media business page is here. And these are the people that have access to that Facebook business page. If we go into ad accounts, right, here's our JB Media Institute ad account. Here are the people that have access to that ad account asset. Here's our Instagram account. Here's the people who have access to that Instagram account, right? So it's annoying and repetitive, but it's how it works. And if you go in and you start to build a business manager, you're going to go in and add your Facebook business page, and you're going to add your Instagram account. And then typically when you start your first campaign, you're going to create an ad account that gets added. And you want to make sure that you can see it in here and more than one person has access, right? You never want one admin to have access to these things. The same thing with your business page. If you go into your business page and you go into the settings, into the new page experience, into the admin roles, you want to be able to see more than one person there. A lot of times when you add people to the Facebook business page in this level, it gives them access at that top level, right? So we don't need to add them to both places typically. So again, just to repeat this, you add people to your business manager, then you add all your assets to the business manager, WhatsApp included if you have it. And then you add people to those assets, right? So when you work with a vendor, it's very important that you make sure they are making these decisions correctly. If they set up the business manager for you, in a lot of ways, that's going to be difficult in the future because they'll have to release ownership of your assets if you want to have your own business manager. So I specialize a lot in helping people bring their advertising in-house. And this is a big issue that we deal with, right? There's no plan when the vendor is done for them to release the assets to the next person. Also, if you have multiple people on staff that are running ads over the course of a few months or years, if you have more than one vendor over the course of a few years, you're going to maybe run into issues if there's not protocol for releasing the assets. So one thing that I do, if I can, is really work with people when they're starting out to set up the business manager under the company itself, right? To add all the assets, to add the people at the actual business or organization that are trustworthy, plan to be there for a long time, and can be those full administrators, right? And then we give access to the vendor from our end, right? Rather than the reverse. It works both ways, but one is going to empower the brand or the business to have more control and to be the one that, is actually owning the assets. As we click through these things, one thing I want you to notice is when I'm here under pages, looking at the JB Media Facebook page, here, it tells me who owns this Facebook account, right? And this is where we get into another level, which is sort of the meta business accounts, right? So JB Media Institute is a sister brand to the JB Media Group. And so originally we created all of our stuff under JB Media Group. So here is the ID of who owns our Facebook page. If we click down to the ad account and click on JB Media Institute, here is another ID number that I want to confirm that owns basically our ad account. Then I go to Instagram, I click on our Instagram, and here's another ID number that is about our Instagram. So I literally map these out because I want them to understand here's how everything is connected, right? And it proves that I connected it correctly in the beginning if I've recorded these. You can take screenshots of these. You could just type them out or copy and paste them, but you want them organized by asset, right? So Facebook page, ad account, Instagram page, WhatsApp account, whatever that is. So I'm always collecting those. Now, from here, you also have business info, right? And if we click and open that, it takes us to this page. And this page essentially is all of the business information that when we created the business manager, we would have had to verify and put together, right? And so this sort of shows like the grandpappy kind of owner of everything. And it basically just makes sure that we've got all this sort of organized. Again, we've got the business manager ID, which is a different number. This is the most important number. This number is repeated a few other places. So when I go into, oops, sorry, let's flip back here. Here is also some of the ad account IDs. This is not the business manager ID, right? So we want to understand kind of the names of things and what they're associated with, right? So as we look at this business manager ID again, as I'm going through different areas in the system, I'm going to see that business manager ID pop up, right? And so again, we just want to chart these out. We might find each one of them in different places, right? But we want to sort of just chart them out, especially if we've already created everything and you've never had a problem or a hack or an error. I think it's really important to go through your system and record all of these, right? And again, I just take screenshots, I put them in a folder, I put them in the cloud so they never get lost. And that way I'm really clear that if I ever have to go to support, I know how to do that. Now, one thing I want to point out about hacks, this is their main page, and I'll make sure this link is in it's in the slide deck, right? When you go to this page and start to deal with a hacked account, it'll say, how do I secure a hacked Facebook profile? So I'm going to secure it here. Oh, what do I have to do? I have to log into my Facebook to secure it. Well, I don't know if you all see the obvious problem with this. So if my personal profile has been hacked, how in the heck will I get to this page? Because this page only exists when I'm logged in to my personal account. right? So this is one of those circles that they get you in where you start to feel like you're literally becoming unhinged because it doesn't make sense. They do the same thing essentially with, sorry, let me pull back up that help page. They do the same thing with a business page, right? So if your business page was hacked, secure it here. Oh, I go the same place. I have to go into Facebook and log in. So this is where it becomes a real issue because this sort of help system that they have, in my personal opinion, is entirely useless. It is a pointless system and never takes you anywhere because basically it requires a login to get access. So when you do have access to things, you have help options, usually in these bottom areas, right? So you've got this help right here. You've got this help right here. You've got this help right here. When I click this, when I have access to everything, this is where I actually can search the help information in the back of the advertising and get a lot of information about business pages, business managers, ads, different things. You'll notice at first, it's giving me just options to click on, right? There's articles. Here are the chats that I've been having for my other clients. So I've already been in this chat numerous times over other errors that we're having that are not hacks, and I'm reporting stuff. If I have a client where they gave me access at one point and then things got hacked, even if I can't access their business manager anymore because I used to have access, I can now get into a chat and push a conversation, right? So down here at the bottom, you'll see contact support. When I click that, it basically says, is this the issue you're having? This is a previous client. It's not that issue. They're dealing with stuff on their own. So I'm like, okay, here's the list, right? Basically what happens to me is a lot of times these things are not exactly what I need. I'll click here, right? Nothing's going to happen until I choose something. So let's say I'm going to say, I've been blocked from using a feature, right? Now that I've told them what issue I'm having, now I have to choose the business manager. I can't get any further without that, right? So this is why sometimes it's important to initiate a chat conversation about something simple so that that goes into your personal messenger. So once I start this conversation, it's going through my Sarah Benoit and it's actually in my messenger app, right? That chat. And I can go back to it and respond to people on a regular basis. So even if you started a chat for just one tiny reason, it would be in there potentially down the road for you to access in an emergency situation like a hack, right? But this is another sort of layer where we're stopped. If I don't have business manager access anymore because my vendor has it, then I'm not going to be able to talk to them about that, right? So it's really, you have to be able to choose one of these systems, and you can choose a page, you can choose an ad account, you can choose a business manager, right? So it's giving me a bunch of different assets to choose from. So again, if I've got a hack on my business page, that becomes problematic because I usually can't choose the page, right? And so essentially it's saying it can't find something. So again, as I sort of play around with just choosing things, again, it's like this issue isn't really what the problem is. So it's going to ask me to go back, choose a better issue, right? So I think someone accessed my business without my permission. Okay, now it's giving me business manager access, right? So sometimes you have to be able to play around with this, try to find the right issue, do different things. Eventually, again, if we go back to the beginning of the help, right? We can sort of just hopefully click through until we get access to potentially a chat option, which is what we're looking for. If I view all my chats, you can see it'll take me right there to the ones that I've had in the past. I can also look at the recommended articles. I can look at different guides, right? But again, a lot of this, it struggles to get me into the chat itself. So there is, if we go back to this page, a way to tell them when something is not helpful. I tell them all the time that things aren't helpful. And there's also just a simple link that they sent me that I'll include in the slide deck as well, where you can go and try to access the chat a different way. The issue with that is, again, it's going to ask you which page or which business manager you're dealing with. If you're on this page, again, and I'll send the other link as well, you'll see they hide up at the top. And again, I'm still logged into Facebook. So if I'm not logged in, I may not see these options. So again, hacking creates a different issue. If I click Get Support, now it's taking me into a bigger view of all the support cases that I have submitted, tells me what is in progress, what actions are required. I can view the details. And at the bottom, it says, still need help, contact support. And now it's going to start walking me into the chat potentially again, but I have to be able to tell them about what is going on. And then they're going to ask me for the asset again. So I'm going to have to pick an option. I'm going to have to pick a page or a business manager or an Instagram page or something of that nature that was once connected to my system. So I know this is not super clear, right? In the sense that I can't just click around and show you all the different ways that you're going to have to sort of like work the system, but you have to time set aside. You're going to click on lots of things. What you're eventually trying to do is get to a point where you can submit an issue. When you do that, they give you a case number, right? And that case number is what you want to reference to the rest of the time that you repeat your issues over and over, because that case number will allow them to go back and attach it to the original issue that got submitted in a lot of ways. So I'm going to stop really quick. I want to look at the Q&A, and we're going to talk about campaigns before we wrap up. Great question, Mark. Does a mobile Facebook sign-in help? I'm not sure if you mean signing in on mobile. Will that make it any different? I'm assuming if so, if that's not correct, please feel free to let me know that I'm misinterpreting the question. But to me, no, actually logging on your phone is worse, because this level of help and the chat support is not actually even as easy to navigate when you're on your phone. And so I do everything through a computer when I have issues like this. I can eventually see my support chats in my messenger. And so that allows me to sometimes go back and try to harass them into talking to me about a case that they've already closed if they didn't fix the problem. But the mobile sign-in, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't really make a difference in a lot of ways. The next question, or does using Facebook Ads Manager help? So Facebook Business Manager is Facebook Ads Manager, if that wasn't clear, right? So the Ads Manager, which is basically what you have when you're one person running ads for one page, and you don't need to have multiple admins or help or vendors. That is really the same thing as the Business Manager. It's just the Business Manager expands your ability to add administrators to the advertising system. But when it comes to support and contact, they're going to route you into the same exact situation, because it's all attached to the same business page on Facebook and or business page on Instagram, right? So Ads Manager and Business Manager are two forms of the same thing. Same thing with the Facebook Ads Manager app. I have not seen that the Ads Manager app, that the Facebook Meta Business Suite app, or that just the Facebook app in general on a phone or a tablet, or if you have the apps on your computer, I actually think it makes it harder. That's just my personal opinion. I'm sure you can eventually access some of the options that I showed you, but in my mind, it truncates the options. I can't read a lot of the data because I'm on a smaller screen. So I do everything on a computer. I've never gotten access to accounts back or features fixed doing it through my phone. The one thing you can do on your phone, which Marilyn brought up, is if an account's been hacked and you have no access and you're desperately trying to get somebody from Meta to reach out to you about an Instagram or Facebook page or even an ad account in a business manager or ads manager, that's where I can easily on many apps report something and just keep saying there's something wrong with the account. Sometimes I can say, I think the account has been hacked. Sometimes I can say, I think my friend's account has been hacked. Sometimes I can just say there's something wrong with this account, right? And so I just report it over and over and over and over and over. We just commit minimally to 8 to 12 weeks of reporting when we're in a situation where we've been hacked and we have zero access at all. Augustine, is it relatively simple from transferring the business account ownership? Our page is currently owned by someone's personal account, so I can't view our business settings. So technically, yes, it should be easy to transfer the ownership, but it is not. It never is easy. The idea is that you should be able to go into a business manager that you create, right? and essentially request access to the assets. And if somebody else owns your asset, they have to look for a notification and then release that asset to you. If we're talking about the Meta business account, which is like a slightly other level where you would have put in all the business information, that sometimes can never really be changed. But if your business manager is set up correctly and the assets have been released, you have access to everything in there to do all of your advertising. That is where they can release it to you. So I'm not sure when you say business account, which thing you're referring to, because they make it all sound the same. But yes, the goal is, if we're talking about creating an advertising business manager, adding Facebook, adding Instagram, adding the ad account, it should ping them with a notification. Now, one of the things that I typically have to do when we're in that process is I have to meet with the person and we have to do the process together, because otherwise they find it very hard 3 hours later to go find that notification, because it's usually in that little bell, or they might get an email. So we want to be together while I'm asking for access so they can immediately look for that request and then hopefully answer it. I will warn you, sometimes they answer the request and it doesn't release. And then you are back in a situation where you have to go to support and ask them for help. Huntington folks, so do you lose access to those support chats? So actually, let's test that out really quick, right? So I'm going to go back to Facebook, but I'm going to go back to my personal account. We're going to look at my messages. So as we scroll down, I've been talking to them a lot. You can see here is a business manager issue. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one, right? So far, we're probably 2 to 3 months in, and it will tell me, if you look at these, that these things are kind of closed out. The chat is ended, right? Sometimes it'll have a little message that basically tells me the case is closed as well. But a lot of times those chats stay there. And so I can go back to them. They don't answer right away if things have been closed or the chat session is ended. So I have to harass them in that chat over and over till somebody answers it, right? Marshall, is there a reference page or glossary of all the words and terms that will cause one's ad to be flagged and disabled on Meta? There really, as far as I know, the only place you can find it is if you Googled Meta community standards, but I don't know if they list words. They do list topics, and there's a lot of them. And so if you Google that, you can Google it right now, even let me know if you can find it. It's usually right at the top. It's not always the same URL. I'll double check and see if I can find a most recent one, but basically all ad things are controlled by their community standards, right? Yeah, and hey, Anna, no problem. I wasn't sure who it was, but glad you're here. Glad to have you guys here. And again, those chats, as long as I know, they will stay up there for a while, but the way that Meta is untrustworthy, in my opinion, we just never know. They might just disappear. And Aaron, your question, what if we don't know who that request goes to and no one is responding? Referring to releasing ownership of a business manager. Thank you. So this is a great question and something I was saving till right now. This is what we call an admin dispute. So when you have a hack that has removed your access to everything, or you have a vendor, a previous marketing person, somebody on staff that's left, a freelancer, somebody who helped you with some type of social media advertising or even just social media management, and they created things for you but didn't set it up with the owner of the company or the head of the company, something like that. Or maybe they've just sort of disappeared, and so they're not answering your emails and things like that. Unfortunately, it's the end, right? You can keep sending the requests, but if they're not answering, it's a problem. And if you have no recollection of who those people are, that's really a problem. And so the one step that I'm now doing with a number of different clients who've been in this position is what we call an admin dispute. An admin dispute will require a couple things. Someone has to have access to that business chat and have a business manager of some kind. This is where people like me are helpful because I'm attached to tons of business managers. I have my own. Sometimes I can go into the chat about a page that I have not had anything to do with, and I can force through an admin dispute for a client. I have somebody I'm doing that with right now. The issue is two things. One, well, first of all, it's literally like the bane of my life. It's like the worst part of my job. It makes me feel insane. And also, I can't price it. It'll take as long as it takes. I usually have to correspond with them almost every day to get them to pay attention to an admin dispute for a business manager that I don't have access to. I have to repeat myself a lot. And so the billing can just go on and on and on for 6 months, right? So there's no way for me to tell you how much it'll cost or any of that stuff. But because I'm already talking to them, I have a better in. So anybody who's an advertising manager in some way for social media or runs a lot of campaigns, it's sometimes worth it for them to be the one that tries to take that admin dispute and submit it. The admin dispute is very involved. It requires a lot of detail. It will make it a lot easier if you've recorded all the different business IDs that I talked about, and you have the link to your Facebook, your personal Facebook, your Instagram, all of the different accounts. You have the links, you have the business IDs for everything, the ad account IDs, the Facebook account IDs, right? Any of that information that you've recorded in the past will be really valuable in putting that admin dispute together. If you have less information, it'll take longer and longer and longer to push it through. The other thing that they'll ask for is a lot of hard documentation that you are a member of that company and that you have a right to reclaim access to things. This requires documentation from your articles of incorporation, your driver's license, all sorts of information like that. And they have a format for a letter they want you to type up. It has to be on letterhead. It has to be signed and scanned, and everything has to be in a PDF. So they have these really strict criteria that I've been studying over the last year. And so far, I've got 2 people right now where we're working on it. And we're probably like 3 to 4 months in the process. And I'm hoping by the time we get to the spring, we'll have access to everything. So again, if you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will keep answering them as we go along. But I want to talk about campaigns really quick. And Marshall, I see your comment. Transparency standards is one page and community standards is another. So community standards is usually how they judge the ads, right? So that is usually what they would get flagged. They would flag an ad for not meeting their community standards. So that's the page that I think is most valuable. And yeah, I know everyone, this is a nightmare to talk about. I'm so sorry. I talk regularly about how if I ever see Mark Zuckerberg, I might need to just legitimately punch him for the fact that he causes so many problems. But basically, yeah, it's like a lot of times you are going to go in these circles and it's going to feel really frustrating that you have to go in those circles, right? But it's okay. The circles eventually do get you somewhere. You just have to commit, like I said, to that long game, right, of working on things. And so for the last few minutes here, what I wanted to touch on was just some basic tips for those of you that are running ads. Now that we've kind of gone over, this really kind of in-depth layering of the system. And again, I will just say, always be prepared that the layering of the system is hard because they make it all sound the same. It's all sort of frustrating and repetitive. And so I like your idea, Marshall, that maybe I should create a glossary just for this. I don't actually think that my language is the official meta language. I think my language is what I use to teach so we can differentiate between the meta business account, the business manager, the ads manager, the meta business suite, and your personal profile, right? Because all of these are involved in your business in a lot of ways. And a good chunk of these are connected to both your Facebook business and your Instagram business so that they can be kind of unified in that meta business suite experience. With advertising, I just threw in some basic things around ad strategy that I think are really important if you're going to be doing advertising. Before you get in and start building campaigns and flushing everything out, I really think you should strategize it first. So developing a campaign mindset by actually mapping out your campaigns, writing it out, typing it out, drawing it on a piece of paper, I don't care. But set your objectives and goals, know why you're doing it. That's the first question you'll get asked when you start a campaign. Know what your budget is and how long you're going to run your ads. Build your audiences first, right? So actually go in and create all your audiences before you run campaigns. brainstorm all your core content ideas from a verbal perspective, right? So put together text and verbiage. You're probably going to have to edit it when you build the campaign, but in some ways you want to have the core selling points narrowed down to short headlines in advance, right? So get to the point. What are these ads trying to say, right? Get all your graphics, your photos, your videos together, and then actually build the campaign, right? It's really important, I think, to have this map. Once you do the first map, you'll be able to repeat it in a lot of ways. So it's really about getting in that habit of strategizing the campaign, then actually implementing it on the meta system. It'll help you really think things through. Part of that strategy is building audiences with intentions, right? So basically, to me, if we go into the ads manager or the business manager and we go into the left-hand menu, there's an area called audiences. I can get in there and create saved, custom, and lookalike audiences. So saved audiences are when I'm just building a new group of people based on their locations, their ages, their genders, their interests, their behaviors, and their demographics, right? That's a brand new bunch of people who maybe never heard about us before. I can also create custom audiences by putting the Facebook pixel onto my website and tracking people from Facebook that are coming to my website. I can upload email lists. I can create custom audiences of people who are regularly engaging with my Facebook and Instagram if they're connected in the system. So custom audiences are another level. It's called remarketing or retargeting. And then sometimes for a small business, you try to create a custom audience. It's not big enough to run ads. It's too small of a group of people. And so then I can say, I want you to create a lookalike audience. I want to make an audience of people very similar to people who've been on my website, or very similar to people who engage in my Instagram, or very similar to people who are on my email list, right? So I can't target those people directly, but the system can look at all their behaviors and interests and demographics and create an audience that's very similar to them. So take the time to do this. If you've created your campaign map, then you should know who you're trying to get in front of, right? You should already have an idea of who you want to target with the ads so you can actually build that for real in the system. And then lastly, always make sure that you have multiple ad sets and ads. Even if you just have one ad set with 3 or 5 ads, that's fine. But it's really important, I think, not to run one singular ad. It's not a good way to spend your money. On the meta system, it will take multiple ads, put them out to the right audiences, and you'll be able to see which ads work the best. And you'll learn from that process, right? Without ever even doing the A/B testing feature, you can actually sort of see, are different photos working? Are different audiences working better? Is video working better than images, right? You can actually build out an ad set with multiple ads that have different text, different visuals, different audiences, right? And some of the more advanced stuff, just to keep in mind for settings, one thing I put in here is avoid the Advantage Plus features, right? They've launched something new called Advantage Plus. They also give you an option when you create your campaign to use their system to set it up or to set it up manually. I would advise, even though it's going to take you longer to learn, that you actually set up campaigns manually and that you avoid Advantage Plus features, that you actually put in your own headlines, you create your own budget, you do all of that work. It's going to help you learn the system and become better at managing it. But I also feel like it gives you the control you need. Once you give the control to Meta, they're just spending the money for you. And I've seen that work badly for people that have smaller budgets, right? It's really important when we have smaller budgets that we have full control over what we're doing. And also there's a place to add UTM parameters for those of you who are more advanced. So if you're struggling with GA4 right now, you're not seeing your social ad traffic, really understanding how to add UTMs to your campaigns is pretty valuable. I may do another webinar on that in the future. Feel free to email me if you have questions about this. I've put in some resources for you and how you can go into the tracking section of an ad and add the UTMs there. But basically right now in GA4, there are some real problems with keeping track of the social media advertising traffic. So we're seeing that it's getting mixed in with organic, it's getting mixed in with referral. And so we're having to do a lot of filtering to kind of see it in our GA4. Of course, I can see the clicks and I can see the impressions, the reach, the views, all of that stuff inside of the meta system by looking at the actual ad reports. But a lot of times I want to correlate what I'm seeing in meta with what I'm seeing in GA4 as far as the impact our ads are having on the website. So I know we're right at the top of the hour. We've got a couple more questions I'm going to answer, but I don't want to hold you here if you have to go. I do want to let you know that next month on March 6th, I'll be doing a digital drop-in on keyword research, how that's changing because of AI. We're going to explore a little bit of how keyword research can be enhanced by using something like Google Bard to help optimize your website. And so definitely come back next month and hang out with me again if you're interested in that topic. And again, I'll get the slide decks and the recordings out to everybody on Friday. And feel free to share this information with anyone you know that you think it can help. Feel free to watch this 100 times if you need to try to remember the layers. Make sure you take some time to collect your IDs and put them somewhere safe in case you need them. Initiate a first ever chat if you can. Again, in the slide deck, there'll be a page where I outline some links that'll help you get there and some screenshots to remind you where they are. But like I said, please utilize this information, spread it around as much as possible, because I really feel like if you're new to this, you want to make sure you're covering all your bases and you take the time to really set yourself up for success. And if you're struggling and you're really having issues, feel free to reach out to me directly and we'll see what we can do. So Ron, great question. How do we prevent getting hacked? So one thing is that I mentioned earlier, always have multiple admins. Never have a business page with one person attached to it. Never have an ads manager or business manager with just one person attached to it. If you can, always add multiple admins. The other thing is there's kind of two pieces. One, have really strong passwords. I change my Facebook password pretty much every 6 months. I also pay attention to the emails that I get from Meta. When it detects strange activity on my account, I immediately change my password, especially if I know that it wasn't me. So I get these notifications, that's in your personal settings on Facebook. I get these notifications that say, somebody accessed your Facebook from, Montana. If I'm not in Montana, that's not me. I'm going to go change my Facebook password immediately. So I actually keep these things on the top of mind, right? I also have very long, complicated passwords, and I know that's frustrating, but it's really important that you just don't put in the same password to all the different things that you're using, especially from a business perspective, even if it's just slight changes. I use a system called LastPass as well, so that all of that stuff is stored in the cloud. It's automatically saved when I change it. All my clients, if I change their passwords, LastPass initiates, it says, do you want to update this in your cloud? I update it automatically. I keep everything up to date. It's not on my computer, so nobody can hack into my computer and steal that information. I also never save my passwords to a browser. So Chrome doesn't have my passwords, Firefox doesn't have my passwords, Safari does not have my passwords. That is some of the easiest ways for hackers to get in, is to actually hack through your browser, hack into your computer, and all of your passwords are sitting there. They can harvest a lot of that information. So I take all those extra steps, which is annoying, I know, but I have multiple clients. And it's really important to me that I don't get hacked because I have access to really sensitive information. Omi, will there be a webinar for that in GA4? You think you might be running into that issue with tracking social media advertising? I am probably not planning to do a webinar on that, although I know you're one of my students now and will be adding you into the classroom in the next couple of weeks. So you can talk more directly with me as a member of the classroom this year about any of those issues. The reason a webinar doesn't work is that it's just really long and involved. And for us, when it comes to the webinars, we're hitting things I think a lot of people are interacting with. But it also depends on your website and how your website is set up. So the GA4 configurations may be slightly different depending on what you're tracking, but I'm glad to assist with that for sure. We can talk about that in office hours and other times. Lynn, a little off topic, but does Facebook offer any financial assistance for nonprofits that you are aware of? So I'm not sure what you mean by financial assistance, Lynn. Essentially, Meta does have a whole section of their website. I'll actually add this to the slide deck on nonprofits, especially if you've been doing fundraisers. I had a client earlier this year. They had $5,000 stuck in their fundraising that they could not move to their bank account. And it had been in there since 2021. So this was 2023. So for 2 years, they had raised $5,000 and they couldn't access those funds because it couldn't move from the Meta system, their nonprofit system, into their bank account. I was able to find a chat in that system after about 3 hours. I initiated a conversation. Then I went to the office of the marketing director of the nonprofit. We initiated the conversation together. And then I instructed her to spend about 3 weeks sending them an email every day, repeating our same request, that they allow us to fix the issue with the bank account number and that they let us move our money. After about 6 weeks, we were able to accomplish that and they got their $5,000. So there is a whole system in there like that. As far as financial assistance, the only things that I'm aware of, and it could be that they've updated this. So at Giving Tuesday, they often do a match where if you pump out your fundraising at 8 a.m. on Giving Tuesday, you've got about 5 minutes to raise as much money as you can from your own people. And then they match that amount and donate it to you. It takes a few months to get them to divvy up the amounts because they end up giving out a few million usually on Giving Tuesdays. But essentially, that's one way that they kind of provide financial assistance. But you have to be willing to plan that campaign. You have to have people willing to donate so there's something to match. And you actually have to get up in the morning. I usually would go with the nonprofit I worked with. I would go live at like 7:45 in the morning and ask everybody to join me and all donate. We'd make a bunch of money and they would pay us the same amount a few months later. There's also a delay in getting the money when you're fundraising. But things like birthday fundraisers, which are part of this nonprofit tool set, can do really well for raising money. As far as other types of financial assistance, I'm not aware of anything, but if you have that nonprofit system, they usually are announcing things in there, giving you opportunities to figure out different ways to build donations. Yeah, and then Marilyn, I'm so glad some of this was helpful. And so I know a lot of people have had to head out because we're 7 minutes after the hour. I'm really glad this was helpful. I know it was super fast paced because we have an hour or less and I wanted to get as much nuggets in there as possible. Again, you'll get the recording and the slide deck on Friday if you attended live today or registered. I do want to encourage you, please consider me a resource. If you're having a struggle, if you're having a question, let me know. And I will absolutely respond to your emails as fast as I can to connect with you. But if you have not been having any problems, I really want to encourage you to take the time to get to know your business manager, to understand the difference between the ads manager and the business manager, to really learn about building campaigns and understand the different components of the system. And if this is something you need support around, again, reach out to me about our content strategy roadmap. This is a great program that came up when Omi was asking questions because she's part of that program now. And essentially that gives you access to me for a very low subscription price of $99 a month. So rather than hiring me for consulting, which at this point is hard because I'm running out of time to provide support around these problems individually, you can still have access to me in my office hours 2 or 3 times a month. You have classes on different topics that you can take. And we're also doing an awesome live AI training series as part of that program. It's called the DIY Tourism 365 program. For those of you that are in the tourism marketing space, we've got a special cohort just for you. But if this is something you need help with and that you're struggling with, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't Google things for hours and hours and feel alone. I feel like the biggest thing we can do is build community around this and work together to solve problems. So thank you all so much for the extra 10 minutes. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to let you go for the day. And like I said, I hope to see you at our next digital drop-in, March 6th from 12 to 1. And we'll be talking about the power of keyword research and exploring a little bit of Google Bard. So have a great rest of your week and don't let Meta grind you down, y'all. Don't let them get you down. Together we can solve problems and we can still succeed because there's a lot of success to be had in this world. Thanks so much. Have a great day.